So my shot story with getting a brand wrong. I was at the Cry party. It was so embarrassing.
How fun.
Yeah. This was my first SHOT Show. Okay. It was my.
Oh, and you went to the Cry party for your first.
I did.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah.
So we'll just wipe that clean off the record. This was also the SHOT Show where I just actually dropped out of medical school. I wasn't sure what I was doing in the industry.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to handle something like SHOT Show. And I ran into someone at the Cry party. His name was Nero, but
Interesting.
That day, a brand called like Nemo Arms.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
So my mind, I maybe had a drink that night.
Yeah,
and
of course.
My mind the next day thought that it was Nemo Arms. So he calls me. I'm on the SHOT Show floor. It's actually the Friday or so of SHOT Show. So
it's the last day or whatever. Yeah.
Cry, I think, was on Wednesday. He calls me and he's like, hey, I would love for you to come over to us. And I'm like, right, which is, and then he gives me a booth number. So I look up the booth number and I don't know, it's just a brand called like Haley Strategic or something.
Oh, interesting.
And so I walk over, I don't work with them now for this reason, but I walk over to the booth and I sit down with this guy. He's no longer there, so I won't, drop him in here, but he's the training director at the time.
Okay. Yeah.
And I go, so tell me about Nemo Arms. And he was like,
no, nothing.
Tell me anything about Nemo Arms. And I was like, oh, that's funny. Who are you with? And he funny. Points and it's Safariland and Haley Strategic crossover booth. And I was like, got it. Well, nice to meet you.
Totally different. Yeah. That's hilarious.
Exactly.
Oh, that's so funny.
So yeah, this conversation to the listeners began because I thought that T.REX Arms, I don't know why I do this to myself. And Lena and I joke about this all the time. I admit things like this.
Yeah.
Well, I would never want this person to find out. And then I'm telling you as the first thing on this podcast, I thought that T.REX Arms was T.REX Arms.
Oh yeah.
And it took like 10 people going, I don't think you're saying
wrong.
That right. Yeah. And
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, in the comments, we're getting like, hey, you and Lucas need to sit down on this podcast. And so I'm thinking like, ooh, I think there's something to this name that I'm saying wrong. So I practiced it.
You practiced
for this interview so that I
Excellent.
Don't say that.
Excellent.
But
I appreciate that.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Yeah,
well, I appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming out.
The most fun intro we've ever done on the podcast.
Cool.
So how exciting.
That's awesome.
But yeah, to the listeners, I hope I did it justice by calling it correctly by T.REX Arms, created by Lucas Botkin. Lucas, thank you so much for being here. Did I say your last name right?
Yes, you
Wonderful.
did. Yes.
Amazing. Yes. Well, thank you. Today, we got to view your headquarters. So we got to see the warehouse. We got to get some footage from that. That was incredibly impressive. I mean, also got a lot of steps in.
Yes. There's a few of those around here.
Exactly. Yes. And you are in, is it okay to say where we're at right now?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So we are in Tennessee right now, not too far outside of Nashville. It's gorgeous out here. That was the first thing I was thinking. And I lost cell reception coming in.
That will happen.
Yes. I like it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Many places around here, you will not be able to call anyone for help. That is correct. Yes.
Good thing I had Lisa driving behind me. But wonderful. Well, I'd love to jump in just straight away with how did you get T.REX Arms?
Yeah. So, the name was funny. So I was making holsters on eBay. And they were selling, which I thought was cool. I was 19 to 20 at the time, was selling on eBay. People were buying, which was wild because the designs were not incredible. The manufacturing was not great. I was in a small garage but I wanted to start a company because I didn't want to just be an eBay store because there were many of those who made holsters that just kind of put out crap, frankly. So I started designing the brand, thinking about the company, being a little more serious about it, did a lot of market research, but the name was the hardest part. Like I did not have a name for it. The name did not come first. I put in probably a year's worth of work, 8 months worth of work of research, building the website. Like I was building the website before I even had the name. I hadn't started taking photos yet of everything. And then I was at the breakfast table one morning with my younger brother and I said, we were rattling off names and I was thinking like animal something, like animal holsters or, whatever it happens to be. And I don't know why, but I just said, T.REX Arms. Oh, it's funny because, little arms. And he was like, no, that's actually really good. And I was like, no, it's not serious enough. We need like a serious name. I want something that commands respect, and, but the whole family thought it was great and I didn't like it initially. But I'm glad I picked it. It's been a very useful name for a lot of reasons from a branding perspective. And it has not limited us in what kinds of products we sell. We're not such and such concealment, such and such holsters. We could sell whatever we want. If we want to stop selling holsters in 5 years and sell tanks, well, we can. And I wanted a name that would allow us to do that. I didn't want to pigeonhole off of concealment or carry or something like that. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I just knew for what I wanted to create, I didn't want it to just be holsters. I didn't know what it would be, but I knew I wanted something a little more that would give me more freedom. So that's where T.REX Arms came from in 2013. And now you've seen what it is today, and hopefully it will continue to grow. And it's been a fun 11 years. So.
Absolutely. And I'm sorry if you already said this today on the tour. There's a lot to take in. I know on a podcast filmed about 3 years ago, you had 75 employees. So how many do you have now?
I think it's 89. We've stayed at about 90 for the last couple of years, which has been really nice. We haven't broken that 100 line yet, although if you add up contractors, and there are companies that do that to kind of flex their number, but we're at like 90, 89 right now. So it's a good amount of people. It's a lot of people. My wife and I have parties at our house for everyone. And we've had over 100 people at our house when they bring their whole families and everything. And we have, food trucks and all kinds of stuff that we do. And that's super fun. And so as we add employees, that will start to get a little harder. And we may have to move and get a bigger house.
Ooh, yeah.
So we may have to do that. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. No, I love that. And you have enough employees to host your own match, which I would love for you to talk about that because I didn't know that before.
Oh, yeah. So a couple of years, so we have our own range, which is essential to the business. We film 95% of our content as far as shooting goes is on our range. We've done some stuff offsite. We'll hopefully do more this year. But one thing I wanted to do, I want to say it was 3 years ago, was start hosting small matches at our range for employees. So I would put together the stages, organize it ahead of time. I think I did 3 or 4 matches. And I'd have a dozen people show up, mostly customer service guys. Some of the younger folks come out. We shoot from, 9 a.m. to 1 or 2 o'clock. The rules are a little more lax. I'm getting them into competition. I'm not going to DQ people for, crazy stuff. We've had a couple people where it's, hey, you're DQ'd on this stage. You turned up range. Pistol was safe. How you normally would shoot out here at our range, but in a match that'll get you fried. So you're done for this stage, resume on the next one. So we kind of do that for training for them. But then I had to kind of step away from doing some of that because I got really busy with work and just job stuff that was happening. And so when Brantley, Miriam, and Brandon Wambach came on, who are our 2 other content creators, they put on matches now for everyone. And Brandon spearheaded that. I want to say it was like 8 months ago. So there's a match. I want to say he's done 4 or 5. And we have our Tactical Games one coming up this Saturday. And we've got, I think, 14 people who are doing this one or more, might be 16. So we have enough people to film our own matches, which is really fun on our small range. If we have, 5 or 6 stages, and that's been super cool that, we can do that. It means that, if I do those events, I'm not doing the other events that are more public, but like the Strategic Edge, not shooting that one. But I'm looking forward to the match this Saturday. I think it'll be interesting. So
that's wonderful.
It'll be good.
Absolutely. And do you miss the process of setting up the match and creating the stages? I'm assuming that was part of your...
absolutely not. No, it was horrible. No, I enjoyed coming up with the stages for what I wanted to emphasize for the staff, because what happened a few years ago is I was on the range 3 days a week. Still am. This week I'm on the range 3 days. It's usually 2 now, but I'd be on the range and I would see staff shooting off to the side, like after hours or something, or on Saturday. Usually weekends, I'd be there on a Saturday and there'd be people shooting over here and I'd be off doing my thing. And I would see the kind of reps they'd be getting and what they were struggling with. And I would then log that. And when I would design the match, I would design it around people's weaknesses often. So I would change up how certain things were done. And so I liked doing that. Now that I don't see as many people shoot, because I don't go to the range on weekends as much anymore, I don't have that information as to where people are sucking and what they're not very good at. So Brandon and Brantley have to do that, which is good. But I had a little bit of fun, but it was also a lot of wrangling. So
it's already hard enough some days just to get to the match after like a week of work and travel. So
for sure.
I just have so much respect for range directors. And I've had a few guest speakers come on and talk about the process of range directing.
Oh, that's very cool.
Help them on their own journey in competition. So I wondered if that was kind of the case for you. But to kind of pivot a little, thank you for sharing that. I think that's such a fun detail. I hope we're the only podcast that has that information.
Yes, you are.
Amazing.
No one else has asked.
We did it. Awesome. So I know there's a wonderful video you have up on your YouTube channel on the inception of T.REX. But for those that are listening to this podcast, to avoid, pushing them over to your YouTube too early in the episode, would you please tell a little bit of that story? Yeah.
So after I started the company in 2013 and it became a full-time job practically immediately, hired my first contractor at, I think, 6 months to help. One of my older brothers and a friend came on board as owners in late 2014 or early 2015. I can't remember. They took over certain parts of the operation that I frankly didn't really want to do, so that I could focus on shooting and marketing and customer value proposition and products. They were handling finance and the operation side of manufacturing, and I didn't want to do that as much. And then from there, the company grew. The company exploded when we created the sidecar, which at the time was the first fused holster where everything was, the holster and the magazine are together. The only other holster at the time that I'm aware of was the original Haley Incog holster where you could screw a mag onto it. It had some issues. It was really flimsy. You couldn't run a red dot on your pistol because the mag sat really close. So it was sidecar-esque, but it was not up to date. So the sidecar in its first inception was all fused together, the magazine's attached to the gun. We twist the kydex to bend the magazine. And that was a training process that it took a long time to train people how much you need to turn the mag into the body and how much you could bend the holster in the heating process. But the sidecar is what propelled the brand because it was a unique product that no one else was offering. It served a need that people had, which was they wanted to carry bigger guns. They wanted to carry extra magazines. They saw a lot of videos of me and other folks shooting and reloading and stuff. And what was really funny is when I launched the sidecar, demoed it, sub-second draws, all that good stuff, there were tons of holster companies who said, that's a horrible design. It's really bad, made fun of it. Then a year or two later, most of them came out with their own version, which was super fun. Right. So I saw that happen. And I was like, okay, they see now. Like they see that this design has merit. They're going to add their own flair to it. They'll increase material here, reduce material here. They'll add, whatever. But the design had merit. And now virtually every company has some sort of magazine attached holster option for appendix carry. Yeah. Not so much for strong side because that's weird. You don't want to do that with the mag in the front. Right. But although I have seen people do it. A dedicated appendix carry solution that gives you the extra ammunition in the front, which is better for balance. It's better for comfort and smoothing out the bulge so that you could seal better. There's just a lot of advantages. So the sidecar is what really propelled the company. At the same time, our YouTube blew up in 2018. There was a lot of action in 2019. COVID happened. The company doubled. We went from 30 employees to 70. We bought this building and then immediately had to buy that building next door. It was wild for like 3 years. The last few years has been a little more stable. It's been a little more calm. We haven't had to jump to 150 employees. We haven't had to do 2 shifts. And the industry's been down a little bit. The economy's been down as well. Things kind of calmed down after 2020, which has been nice. And we've been able to improve systems and processes and different things. But yeah, that's kind of the story of T.REX. And we're in a phase right now of I believe we're preparing to do another sort of launch or upwards trajectory of growth and probably hit 100 employees and buy another building and some other things we have cooking up. So we're getting ready for that. And I'm excited for what's next. So Absolutely. It'll be good.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
At this point, I've toured 3 different warehouses for holster manufacturing. This is by far the largest and most impressive. I also like all the little, cool. I didn't say this earlier. I was holding it back for this, but that you have a lot of little living rooms everywhere. Yeah. It's kind of like little setups with couches and chairs. And it seems like a really great place to work. And I especially liked your customer service center. You had all these string lights and plants, and I'm sure your employees did that. But
they set it all up. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it says a lot about the environment that they feel comfortable enough to make it a little bit of home away from home. So I think that's really cool. Yeah. An aspect I wanted to share. And of course we have footage from the tour a little bit from that. We just had to not catch anything coming out too soon. That's available for sale elsewhere, but I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Something I'm curious about your personal journey with is You've spoken on other platforms about watching the Magpul videos, and that was something that really inspired you to get into the educational posting side of things, which, by the way, is one of my favorite things about your platform, making that accessible to everyone from beginner to someone wanting to run full kit and do all the really flashy stuff. What was that trajectory like from watching those Magpul videos to feeling like you were ready to start becoming an educational platform yourself?
Oof. So yeah, Magpul videos came first. I had those in 2011, possibly 2010. I think it was 11. I had I have some of the parts around here. My original AR-15, I think was a DPMS or Delton. I think it was a Delton kit. Had a 22 conversion bolt. This is back when 22 was like $20 for a brick of 550 federal ammo. And I was burning through bricks. I probably burned through 10 to 20 bricks just shooting chunks of logs on other logs is what I had. And I had the Magpul videos, so I was kind of like practicing reloads, and I didn't have a handgun, so I wasn't doing rifle to pistol transitions. But I was like, okay, like I'm figuring this out. And then when I was getting ready to start T.REX, we had moved from that property to a different one, and I was still shooting that rifle, but I knew I needed to go start shooting matches because I had heard about IDPA, and I was like, I should go do this thing. So I showed up to my first IDPA match, borrowing my one of my brother's Glocks, a Glock 17. I didn't even have my own. And I had all my Kydex that I made, and I had a battle belt and all this really cool stuff. And I thought, like, I'm going to do pretty good. I've been watching videos. I've been shooting a little bit, although pistol, very little. I've shot a lot of rifle, and then showed up to the match. I was like second from the bottom,
Yes.
But I had a lot of fun from that. I saw the value in, I've got to move, shoot, reload. IDPA had some corny rules back then. Still do. They have fixed a lot of them, but yeah, there's still, I do not recommend spending time on IDPA unless you have to, but unless it's the only match available. But so I did that, and I decided, I need to keep shooting matches because that's going to allow me to, I'm going to learn how to shoot better. I'm going to test gear, at these matches. So I started shooting every month religiously at that club. And then when I went next door to the USPSA club, they did their match on a different Saturday. I immediately quit the IDPA club and just did USPSA at NTPS, which is now Strategic Edge. And I shot there again, like every month. I would reload my bullets the night before on a progressive Dillon press that my older brother had. And then after doing that for about 2 years, I want to say, I stopped shooting matches. JJ Rakaza, I talked to him, and he actually advised me to stop going to matches and just train on my own, and that I was kind of not going to get a lot from shooting club matches. So I was like, thanks, JJ. That's cool. So I kept shooting quite a lot, and my progression of what I emphasized in training has changed probably 8 times. The first time it was very sort of tactical Magpul stuff, even when I started mixing in the competition shooting. Then I went into a phase of I was very focused on equipment and full kit. That's when I started having a little bit of money so I could buy stuff. It wasn't very performance driven. I really wasn't that focused on, I don't want to say shooting better or pushing the limits of what I could do. It was a lot of really close drills, flashy stuff for Instagram. I had a shot timer. I believed in those. I knew that was important, but the shooting wasn't complex or difficult. So for about 4 years, I didn't get better. I got better at manipulation, rifle to pistol transitions, reloads from plate carriers. I got the equipment side down, but my shooting just kind of sat at probably a B USPSA level. It wasn't anything that crazy. And then when I went and started shooting again, shooting some matches, I went and shot 3-gun, shot Safariland multi-gun. I started to see again high performers, and I understood what to watch for. Like, oh, these guys are going 1 for 1 on steel out to 400 meters. They're paying attention to these things. Then I started to focus performance, and then the next iteration of my training was when Joel Park from Practical Training Shooting Group. Practical. Yes, I got that right. PTSG. I always get it wrong and say PSTG. He reached out and said, in his Joel way, he said, hey, do you mind if I give you some criticism? This is back in 2020, I want to say, 2021. I said, absolutely. Shoot it over to me. And he sent me Coach's Eye videos of just all this stuff that I was doing wrong. And I watched it all because I love stuff like that. Because I was already prepared for that. I was trying to self-analyze what I was doing. If he had sent that to me in 2016, 16, I probably would have been like, who's this, nerd? And I would have just deleted the DM. But I saw what he was saying. It made sense. And then I responded back, and I think I eventually just said, hey, why don't you come out and shoot with me? Like, just, you down for doing that? He said, absolutely. So he came out and shot with me for a day, and that opened up a whole new plateau of performance, like room to grow. And so I shot with him. He changed my outlook on a lot of training. And then I hung out with Ben Stager a little bit, same thing. So I found those guys, and they took me to the next level of understanding shooting and what I can do with shooting. Because for the most part, a lot of my shooting, I've shot over 500,000 rounds. I've shot 250,000 rounds with Glocks or so. A lot of it has been wasted ammunition because I didn't know what to pay attention to, and I didn't know how to push myself. I kind of knew, like, shoot till I miss, but I didn't know what to pay attention to once I missed. Like, was it my grip? Was it what I looked at? Was it, what aspect was it that I actually needed to hone in on? So working with Joel and Ben, and then Pranka and some of those other guys the last few years has been tremendously helpful. And at this point, I'm sure there's someone who's even past those guys, but I do think those guys are at the frontier of what is available for shooting as far as education and teaching. And so, which is kind of scary because I don't want to be stuck again at a plateau once I get, good enough, which will take a few more years probably, or if not longer. So I'm hoping by then there will be someone new who's got some things figured out who can push the boundaries a little bit more. But that's kind of been my progression. I've shot a lot of bullets. I've spent thousands of hours on the range. I've loaded a lot of magazines. My lead levels are high. My body's jacked up. I can't deadlift with my legs perfectly straight because I shoot with my right leg behind my left leg so much that my sport doc, when he saw that, he was like, can you shoot off of your left foot? And I was like, no, I don't. Like, it's not really shooting rifle. It's not really a thing as much, except for some positional stuff. And so he said, well, you're fine. You're an athlete. Like, that's your repetitive injury. We're just going to, here's some things you could do to kind of mitigate that. So I have all sorts of body problems from how much I've shot. But the training I do now is far more productive. It's lower round count. It's less time on the range. It's a lot less in kit unless it's specific to something I'm working. And it's just a lot more professional than what I used to do, which was running around with guns and looking cool and shooting really fast and missing, which is what I did for years. So
absolutely.
Yeah, it's been good. I
appreciate you sharing that. That's, first of all, very vulnerable for you to step in and say, I wasn't where I needed to be. I still have a lot to learn. I think that's great for anyone listening, any level. I also love the diversification of all of the guest speakers that have come on and how they have ended up at the level they're at, which not all guest speakers are grandmaster or even master level. I think it was, was it Matt Larson? He said A class is kind of like having your black belt in shooting or something. Yeah. And that always kind of hit me. Like, I think sometimes master level, grandmaster level can seem unattainable, but as long as you're working towards something, all of that. But something I'd like to kind of branch off of this too is I feel like I entered at least the gun industry in what you could call the golden era, right? There's I would think that, or we're right about there. There are very, very many resources, especially when it comes to females, which I know not all of that is created equally. There are all these micro niches that people fit into from, true gun bunny to, educator level. Maybe some crossover there even too. But all that to say, this is a truly great time to step in. It's also a time where people are finding, there's a word for this. Hold on. Oh my gosh. What is the word for when you have the criteria or you have the, oh my goodness.
Validation?
Yeah. Qualification.
Yes.
Thank you, Lisa.
That was the original question too.
Right?
Yeah.
But, there's this almost increase as well at the same, maybe the same rate that everyone feels they have the qualification to speak on certain topics. Like almost this overlap between my personal story and what is maybe correct or even like the best. So for the new shooter, or even someone who just consumes content on social, what would you recommend what lens would you recommend they view this content through in order to stay on a good trajectory that fits for them and their goal with a firearm.
Are you saying for a viewer looking at a content creator, or a content creator creating content for the viewer?
More so the viewer viewing content across all platforms, right? So
yes.
I think the term industry indicates we have standards, and there aren't many. And that's something I love about T.REX ARMS. I almost want to say TRX just to be funny, but
you can. Yeah, that's fine.
I know, I've worked hard. Anyway, but yeah, you all are setting a new standard for that. But for someone who is maybe just the average consumer, what lens would you recommend they view content from?
First off, I think what I have learned the last, especially 5 years, is there are very few, and I'm talking maybe like 24 max, actual subject matter experts in this industry who are actually at the tippity top of what they know and understand as far as shooting goes. There's SMEs on bullets like Brian Litz. There's very specific nerd people out there who are at the top 1%. But when it comes to firearms trainers and shooters and gunfighters, whatever you want to call them, it really is only a couple dozen people at the top, in my opinion, who can actually call themselves SMEs. So, and I'm not one of them. I think the way viewers need to view content from 98% of people is I am getting insight into their journey of where they're at. They're beyond where I'm at. Probably they have more time, resources, money, opportunity. They do it for a job, you know. You can recognize that, but you're viewing their journey of, you know, what they're trying to, you know, get better at or understand better. And what I will say is if you start to view, you know, who you watch through that lens, you will quickly realize that most content creators are not trying to get better. They're not on a journey. They're on a journey to get maximum sub count on YouTube, make as much money as possible, grift as many companies as possible, get as many sponsorships as possible. They're not actually on a journey of becoming a better, higher performing version of themselves, besides their net worth, maybe. And so when you start to look at content creators through that lens, you see very quickly who is trying to get better year after year. Which means the content will be better. It'll be more educational versus the people who are just grifting. Because the reality is most of us on YouTube are not SMEs. I haven't been in dozens of gunfights. I haven't won matches. I'm not a national champion or anything like that. Now I know a bunch of stuff and I've had a lot of experiences most people will never have. And I can talk about those from hey, I just experienced this sniper match. Here's what I learned. Here's what I'm trying to do. Here's where I want to be in a year. And that approaching topics from that angle is both really inspiring to people, but it also takes away some of the risk of setting yourself up as an expert for when you inevitably fail or say something stupid, which is often what happens. Like the more you claim that you know a thing, the harder you will fall when you make a mistake, which you will make. Like in the video that's publishing tomorrow, I thought I shot a spinner at 400 meters with a 2.2 hold. I was thinking about the KYL rack stage. So the mistake isn't that big. We just put a little note in the video. That's a tiny one, but people will make mistakes about shooting, equipment, training, and whatever it is. And as long as you haven't put yourself up as an expert, it's okay to make mistakes. That's fine. It's okay to make a mistake. So as a viewer, I would say look at everyone as you are seeing an insight into their journey. Hopefully they are on a journey and they will actually get better year after year. If they're not getting better year after year, then you should ask yourself, why are you watching them? Is it a gear recommendation or you want validation for a purchase you already made? Do you just want to be entertained? Or do you follow people who will inspire you in your own journey to get better at combatives, get better at shooting, better at business development, better at whatever it is? So for me, I don't watch very many gun tubers and gun content. I just don't.
Totally fair.
Most people, and I've learned this the hard way in some cases, most people in this industry do not have a performance mindset for becoming better at their jobs every year, which ultimately helps the viewer if that is their objective and their goal. Because at this point, one of the conversations I had with Joel was saying, he said, you know, you really don't have to train anymore. Like, you know enough about shooting and guns, you could just do YouTube. Like, you don't have to spend a whole lot of time getting like a little bit better. And I said, you're right. I could have stopped like 3 years ago Like I'm already better than most people. I shoot well enough for YouTube. I could just make money shooting these fast videos at 50 meters. But that's not good enough for me. There has to be more. I have to push the boundaries, even if it's a little bit every year, not a ton. I'm not a GM shooter. I haven't won any matches, but even if I can just push the boundaries for myself a little bit more, that will allow the content to be more educational every year and actually more beneficial. So that's a long-winded answer.
Oh, I am so happy that you did that. Yes. I love when guest speakers come on and they're like, sorry, that was a lot. And I'm like, this episode is entirely about you. If you sat there and said 5 words, I would be so freaked out that I would not have prepared. So please go on.
Okay.
I have so many places I want to go from here. One of the big things is, speaking from my experience, I started a YouTube channel. I'm just going to admit this. I'm just going to say it. I started a YouTube channel like right after this breakup I had in college.
Oh, yeah.
And those videos are no longer up. So do not try to find this. You'll waste your time. But I took them down because I was like, what am I even saying here? And I remember being like, you know what? This is just too much. I was just about to leave for medical school. I was like, am I going to be a doctor? Am I going to be a YouTuber? Like, come on, Sofia, pick a lane. And like a lot of people had told me like, hey, this is great. You're doing this, but heads up, it's an all-inclusive lifestyle of just studying 24/7, which is true. A lot of back pain. Anyway, moving on. Looking back, I think if I had kept up my journey, whether or not the content was correct, this is the hard part, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to misinform, but I didn't want to misinform. I still don't. But it actually impeded me from even sharing said journey. So how would you say, what's like the magic formula and what did you do to make sure that you sharing your own journey was not a means to spread misinformation or a lower tier of information? What did you do to kind of like, I know it's a weird question.
No, it's not weird at all. Yeah. So again, I think I learned this early on, which was good. And some of my earlier videos, I do come across like, do it this way and this thing will result. Now, typically it was very like basic stuff. I wasn't telling people how to clear rooms or anything, but later on in like the 2019, 2018 era, I started to adopt way more of a, hey, this is what I'm doing. It works for me. This is what I'm doing. You can do it if you want or not. I don't care.
Right.
Kind of adopting that mentality for the content. And again, that eliminates some of that risk of, because people are gullible in this industry. If they see someone with a lot of followers or they see someone with a lot of guns or they see someone with a lot of like a super cool rifle, they will just assume that person's an expert. Like you can be whoever you want to be on the internet. You could spend some money and look really rich. So you do have to tread very carefully with that when you do have a platform of that size. And what I tell people is being a public figure, and I'm a very small one. I'm not like a Beyonce or anything, but I get recognized in public all the time.
Sorry, I love that. That was your reference.
I have to say it because it's like,
sure.
Because we're micro niche influencers, right? Like in the grand scheme of things. But I get recognized almost every time I go out in public now. Like I was at Lowe's. Well, it's kind of terrifying, but I was at Lowe's with my wife on Sunday picking up potting soil, and the cashier, he looked at me too long when I walked in. And that's when I know you have a seventh sense. You just tell, especially, yeah. So sure enough, I mentioned to her as we walked in, like, I think that guy, he looked at me too long. Like, I think he knows who I am. So we ended up going back there anyway. And sure enough, he was like, you're one of those YouTubers. And I was like, yes, I am. And he said, you're T.REX ARMS. I was like, yes, you actually know which YouTuber I am. So no, he was super cool.
Did they try to tap on your holster?
No, okay, he didn't do anything. I actually never had that, which is funny. But no, if you're in a position as a public figure or an influencer, you have to be very careful about that misinformation piece.
Right.
And it wasn't until about 2018 or 2019 that I started to kind of realize that. And what I tell people is it is a full-time job, practically, once you get a little bigger, of preventing that from happening. Because I can produce a video tomorrow talking about how to shoot a handgun, and I could say something really stupid about it, and that could set back, people's understanding of shooting a handgun by years before they can get that corrected by someone who actually knows what's going on, who articulates it better. And I think a lot of people don't understand that the content that they put out, if they make a push for a certain kind of optic or a certain kind of piece of equipment, that can distract regular gun owners, regular viewers for a couple years even before they get back to focusing on what's important, which is training, using what you have, probably just using a red dot, nothing like crazy. I don't know if that exactly answers your question, but it was around 2018, 2019 that I started to recognize like, oh, I actually have some influence. I need to be careful with it. I had a lot of companies trying to sponsor me. I had a rifle company offer, I think it was $9,000 a month. Yeah, it was $8,000 a month, something like that, to shoot their rifles exclusively. And I knew if I take this deal, which is a 6-figure deal, everyone's going to think their guns are great. Their guns are okay. They're not actually that great.
Okay.
And it's against my brand to be exclusive like that because I shoot everything. So I'm not going to do that. So yeah, it's a huge responsibility. I don't think people take it seriously enough in this space because we're not just, and what I try to tell people is it's not like we're the video game industry where it's just fun, luxury goods, stuff like, no, this is life and death stuff. When you're teaching how to shoot or you're teaching how to fight or you're teaching what equipment you should have, a recommendation is potentially a life-saving or life-taking recommendation. Like this is serious stuff. And I kind of knew that when I was just getting started, but I didn't understand the full significance of that. And as I've spent time with guys in the military, law enforcement, we have people here who are in the military and law enforcement, and I talk to them directly about real life situations they've been in and the equipment and how it affected, the outcomes and whatnot. I'm like, oh, this is serious stuff. Like, this is not just, I'm selling some, a toy, of some sort for kids or like airsoft or something. Like, no, this is life and death stuff and it has to be taken seriously. And it's why our company does not get along with most of the people in this industry because they're just in it for the cool factor. Guns are cool. They are. Yes. I freely admit we have some cool guns and they are cool. But they're in it because the guns are cool. The money's okay. It's actually not great money, to be honest, compared to other industries. And they're not actually in it for, what really matters, which is preserving life and enabling people to do that more effectively and increasing how many of those people exist in the world. So that's my goal.
Oh,
one of them.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's actually one of your ideologies, something I want to dive into. For those listening, I really liked your example on law enforcement side. You're selling gear that people are completely armoring themselves with so that, a round doesn't lodge into their bodies. On the civilian side, one of the biggest things right now is people becoming subject matter experts over concealed carry based on how they carry. That's what I'm seeing a lot. And it's a my way or the highway kind of view. And do not get me wrong, when I started out, I had a few things that I just stood by. I'm going to admit it. We're being vulnerable here. I stood by Glock. Yes. But I even shot a SIG? No. But did I stand by Glock? Yeah. Because no one fought me on it. Everyone was like, can't fight you there. And I'd be like, oh, I know, right? Anyway, and then I would get into like the Filster Enigma for concealment. That was my big one. It was like, this is the only way, right? And then I recently had an abdominal injury. I tore the fascia between my abdominis rectus. I had a little blood pocket there. It's the weirdest thing I've ever done. Can't tell you how I did it, but CrossFit. But I ended up wearing, I still love CrossFit. I ended up wearing off body pretty seriously because of this injury. And it got me curious about it. And before that I had started playing with it. Lena came out with a Vertex EDC fanny pack. And I started seeing people just throwing their guns into bags alone. I started seeing them throw it into a holster, but in the same compartment as their other materials, flagging, their arm when they're pulling out, all these little things going wrong. And, these are people I do follow still. I use it for, our R&D purposes.
Yes.
I follow them.
Market research.
We wouldn't want to lose that account. But I still see this happening. And these are very influential people who market, and I'm kind of on the women's side here, market to just larger groups of women. They also have this like training company on the side that they pair with this. I'm thinking of a few people in particular. I don't believe in shouting those people out. I'd rather DM them privately and see if I can get something going, or just like make my page, as big as I can and kind of offset that. But that is absolutely true. and I'm kind of speaking to this because I'm hoping if there's a listener out there who's starting their page that they can see that it's absolutely worth it to think of what is safe first and then kind of move on from there as well. I started doing that with off-body carry. I'm kind of ranting here, but
that's good. Yeah,
I'll close that loop. But I started coming up with criteria. So like carry what you want. Here are my recommendations if you are starting from zero. But if you already have a bag you like, does it have a trigger guard over the does it have a guard over the trigger, something hard that you can't pull the trigger through? Is the holster made for that firearm? And is it in a different compartment separated from the rest of your materials in the bag? And if those 3 things are checked and that bag doesn't come off of you, you can't really go too wrong. You have like a home storage plan and communicate with your family, that kind of thing. So I started creating kind of like this little foundation that I could speak on.
That's
and that kind of leads me into the next topic, which is that aspect of buying more gear before working with what you have. Where would you say that threshold is of training versus gear purchasing and collecting? Are you ready to step up your shooting game? Introducing Walkers Inc., the pioneers in ear protection for shooting, hunting, and commercial applications. For over 25 years, they've been revolutionizing the industry, ensuring your hearing safety and enhancing your shooting experience. Anytime I'm on the range, indoor or outdoor, I use Walkers ear protection to have crystal clear communication with my fellow shooters. I personally use the disruptors for outdoor shooting and the recons for my indoor shooting adventures. Not only does it protect your hearing, but it also protects you. Being able to communicate with others on the range is vital to personal safety. You shouldn't have to sacrifice your safety when the ultimate goal is better self-protection. With Walkers, you'll experience unparalleled comfort, unmatched innovation, and the industry standard in shooting ear protection. Don't settle for anything less when it comes to your safety and enjoyment on the range. You can save on Walker's ear protection and support the podcast by using code SHESHIELD20, that's SHESHIELD 20 at checkout. Again, that's SHESHIELD20 at checkout. I know this is...
This is the hot topic,
Yes, and I specifically want to ask you because you are a retail company, but you also... you're leading with the ideology side of being more prepared citizens against other harmful citizens, government, in addition to the training side. So this is like your bread and butter. So I want to know where that is.
I want to say something scandalous. Most of our customers should probably not be buying a lot of the stuff we sell. Yet. I say yet. Yeah. Now, the reality is the biggest problem with the industry right now, in my opinion, is there are not enough places for people to use the product they buy. There are not enough ranges that allow them to move and shoot. There are not enough ranges that allow them to do what I do. There's not enough ranges that allow them to shoot the way Joel, Ben, and Pranka shoot. They have an indoor range and they stand there and they slow fire 1 round every second, and they can't use a shot timer because there's people shooting Draco pistols and Desert Eagles next to them. But what ends up happening is customers realize I can't train the way Lucas and the T.REX guys are and all these other prepared citizens, but I feel like I need to be involved. The only thing I can do is buy stuff and have it for when things happen. And there's nothing wrong with that. In a perfect world, what we would have are ranges all over the country, kind of like what Switzerland and some other European countries have, that embrace more practical shooting, let's call it. You could say militant, but more practical shooting, where people could take out the product they buy and use it on a regular basis. We don't have that right now. That might be something I get into in the future because I have some ideas business-wise on that. I think that is one of the hang-ups right now, practically speaking, for why people focus on buying gear instead of using it. There is a practical component there. It's also easier to just buy stuff than using it. People will always do that, and they'll feel prepared by having, a plate carrier that's fully kitted, they've only worn for 2 hours. They will feel more prepared from that, and that is something that our company will continually speak about and remind people, hey, this stuff's only as useful as you are with it. You need to go out there and train. The videos I'm publishing tomorrow on sniper stuff, the main emphasis is, hey, go get some gear and go to a match. You can take a lot less than I took. You'll learn, you'll lose, you'll place towards the bottom or in the middle somewhere. But you need to get out there and use the product that you're buying. Otherwise it's sitting and isn't that useful. So it's tricky because the training, the push for training has only really just started, in my opinion, in the last 4 years. And at the same time, there was a huge glut of purchasing of product and consumerism on YouTube and gun tubers and ads and sponsorships, and the height of social media kind of blew it out of proportion a little bit with the golden era of social media in like 2018. But there is a practical component that I hope we can look at solving, which is places people can use the product that they're buying, and they just can't. We sell product to, people in New York will have stuff but can't train with it, or people in some other state. And there's also, but I have to call out people's laziness a little bit. There's a lot of people who say, well, I don't have a range, 15 minutes away, so I'm just not going to train. The reality is most people drive an hour at this point to get to a range where they could shoot. Yeah. From my house, it's 45 minutes to my range. If I want to train on the weekend, I'm going to have to put in an hour and a half of driving, possibly stopping for gas, depending on which car I take, in order to train on a Saturday. And most people who are serious about training are driving upwards of an hour to get any sort of training done. So the whole waiting for your favorite instructor to come to your town or wanting a range that's 15 minutes away is not a realistic expectation for 90% of the population of the US. Some people, who have a range in their backyard can just shoot whenever, and that's cool. But if you are serious about training and using the product that you've bought from T.REX Arms or another company, you need to be willing to put in the time to drive and find a range or talk to a friend at church, see if you could shoot on their land. I've done that before. Ooh, yeah. And make the time to make it happen. But my comment about most customers shouldn't buy the product that we sell yet, I stand by it because there's a lot of consumerism. And I hope that the majority, our customers who are buying stuff from us, especially on the retail side, have a plan to use it in the future. If they're buying it now with a plan to use it in 6 months, that's cool. I like that a lot. As long as they take it out of the packaging, they mount it to their rifle, they mount it properly, they have a plan to zero it, they're actually going to train with it. Those are the people I want to support. I don't want to just sell to people who want to stockpile that much, as useful as that can be for some products, right. Like ammo. But even ammo, like stockpiling ammo is cool, but have a plan to shoot half of it. Right. Like train, buy 1,000 rounds, shoot half, stockpile the other half. That's cool. So it will be an uphill battle for many years to get people to take training seriously because it's hard, and buying stuff online with a credit card is easy and it's fun. Ooh. And you can just do it. And if you combine drinking at the same time, ooh, it's even easier. Not that I have experience with that, but
no, not at all. Same thing. Yeah. It's a good thing SHOT Show, you can't really buy anything, right? I mean, Did they create a vendor day?
I think they technically recently you sort of can, but I don't think most vendors do.
Okay.
It's just cool. Regular meeting stuff. Yeah.
Right. I don't know why I said very cool to that. I just mean like, okay, good to know. Yes, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Solid. No, I appreciate you sharing that. So something this is something I told you I really wanted to ask you about one thing in particular before we start.
Yeah.
Thank God I had other questions though. Oh my gosh. I forget I'm the host sometimes. So moving on. Since I was like 13, this is so embarrassing. Okay. I watched The Walking Dead. And I was like, the world is going to end. That's for sure. Right. Yeah, the world's definitely going to end. Like that's going to happen. It's definitely going to be zombies. And
for sure.
Yes. I was so obsessed with this concept to the point, I don't think I've ever admitted this out loud on social media, but I listened to podcasts about it. Like, what are we going to do in the zombie apocalypse? Yeah. The most I had was a traditional recurve 35-pound pullback.
Nice.
Bow. And target arrows, not even like the cool ones with the 100 rounds.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's all I had in my room. And this is, of course, my parents divorced when I was younger. And I was the one girl in the house because I have two sisters and mom. I'm really getting into it right now.
Cool. Nice.
Later I'm going to be like, great, overshared again. So I got into archery because I was like, someone walks through that door, I'm just going to, like, it's just going to happen. Like, I'm coming for you. I'm going to be waiting with that arrow. Because that's all I had. It was that or like the machete in my closet, which I don't know how to use that. So all of that to say, I was that kid. I was convinced of the zombie apocalypse. And every year for Christmas, I would ask for something, a pair of binoculars, walkie-talkies, emergency blankets and stuff like that. And it has absolutely traveled into adulthood, but it's more practical now. Don't get me wrong.
Yes, yeah.
And I do see zombies, to be clear, as the people who are underprepared for a crisis. That could be a natural disaster. That could be, true end of the world, whatever you want to call it. But I heard this on a podcast one time, and they were like, what we say when we say zombie, we mean those people that are going to loot your homes, harm your family, whatever. So first of all, you can speak as much to this as you'd like when it comes to what you think is actually most likely. Politically, we don't have to go there. I mean, if you have like a thought there, I'd love to hear it.
Thoughts.
Amazing. Okay. And the one of the main reasons I'm asking, other than I just want to hear you talk about this, is one of the first things I did was buy a plate carrier. And I got a brand to send me AR plates for exchange of some content. And I used kind of my platform to collect this gear because I was like, I got to stockpile. At the time, at the time I was with a partner who wasn't really into it. So I was like, great, I got to lift him too. Like I got to get a plate carrier for him. Everybody needs a plate carrier. And it was this really almost unrealistic view of like what would happen, right? And I'm thinking the first like 24, 48 hours, and this is a good time to say I'm not a subject matter expert on this. I don't know if that's shining through yet.
I'm not either.
So this is our story here, but I had a discussion with a friend recently, and he was like, yeah, I mean, most likely things aren't going to shut down right away. There's going to be like a 24, 48 hour period. Going to Walmart in full kit, which hopefully by then you have enough stored, you don't have to go to Walmart in this scenario. But say that like what you emphasized was ammo and gear. Going to Walmart in like a full plate carrier when there are still like police and like acting military is probably not the best move. Yeah. So I'm just going to stop there.
Okay.
And I would love for you to take it away. Like, what is preparedness when it comes to practical preparedness, natural disaster, all the way to like zombie apocalypse?
Okay. I could get really cerebral with this. And I will. But first I'll call myself out. Okay. So when the hurricane happened in North Carolina and Wake Forest, that happened kind of last minute, and I started making some plans to go over there, talk to some people. My wife and I were able to help with some supplies and things, which was fun. Yeah. I didn't end up making it over there. I was a little late, to be honest, in getting over there, and other stuff was coming up. But I realized as I was, kind of coming up with my my packing list of my equipment, there were a lot of things I didn't have from a regular national disaster level of preparedness. I didn't have stuff to unstuck a vehicle or my vehicle. There were just very basic things I didn't have that I started ordering like that night. I was just like, oh, I don't have this. I don't have this. I don't have this. And I was unprepared for a more basic, not war zone situation, although there were elements of that disaster that were like a war zone. I was talking to sheriff department guys who were being airlifted to certain little sections of the town that they couldn't get vehicles into. So dudes were heloing in supplies, helping people, leaving a couple deputies there, and then flying back and doing these air operations into these areas, which is a little more war zone-ish related. Right. So I had my own lack of preparedness for something that is, not shooting looters, not getting into fights, not doing CQB and raids and stuff. And I actually think that's where more people need to focus. I wouldn't be surprised if most of the 2A gun prepared people can't even meet the criteria that FEMA lists on their site for how much water you should have, how much supplies. Their little list is not bad. I believe my wife and I can meet that criteria. Most people probably can't, but they have kit and rifles and cool stuff. And that is important for that sliver scenario that is way further down, which is we saw in 2020, we're going to go protect people's stores or businesses. We're going to protect our neighborhood from these roving Antifa hordes. That is the scenario in which the kit makes sense. But it's a very small scenario in which you're going to need that. When you're going to need it, you're going to want it. What's more likely is everything that comes before, which is national disasters, something goes wrong. And over time, as I've kind of wrapped my own brain around that, because I used to be in the whole kind of Walking Dead, like I've got all this kid, all this gear, night vision, fun stuff. I realized that most scenarios can be solved with one thing, and that is your ability to work with people. Ooh. This is the cerebral part of this. I believe preparedness it's easy for people use all this stuff as an escape to not focus on the big picture and what's important. And that is their ability to work with other people. I think the best training ground anyone can have, and I've said this before, is whatever workplace they're in right now. If you cannot work with people in a sterile environment with no stress, no amazing stress, right? Where people are dying, there's loss of life or whatever. If you can't even function in a McDonald's or function in a manufacturing plant or your IT company and you can't work with people, there is no way you're going to survive in a disaster scenario or as a resistance leader leading your band of militia or whatever. Right. It's not going to happen. And most people take their current workplace for granted. If you're working 45 hours a week at some plant, well, it's 45 hours of experience you can get working with people and doing stuff. And I realized that a few years ago. We had some, it was from former employees and just other stuff that was going on where I realized, man, this environment that I'm in, working with teams and people, that is much better training for me if I go and offset to a new environment like Wake Forest or in the future, Texas or somewhere, because it's going to be working with people. That's what it's going to be. And the people will be more stressed. They'll be more freaked out. There'll be more conditions, more variables. It'll be harder for sure than what we have right now. But I will be more prepared for that scenario working on my people skills now than just buying equipment or camping in the woods or rucking in the woods. That's all good and fine. But if you're not doing the people skills part and you're developing those, you're not developing those, you're going to have a really hard time when things actually get rough and actually get tough. And what I'm saying is not the sexy part about preparedness. It is not. Working with your coworkers at Lowe's, working with your coworkers at your software firm or your accounting firm. Yeah, I know it's not cool. Like it's not as fun as shooting on the range with the boys, but it is going to pay off dividends if you put in the time focusing on what's important. If there is a scenario in 5 years or 10 years, whether it's a government goes crazy because they don't want to lose the Republicans again, Antifa blows up. We had a fun conversation after my Wreaking Havoc show with the producers there at that studio about we were started to sort of war game out protecting their location. They're like, hey, if we had to protect your location, here's how we would do it. And a lot of it was coordinating with people. It was not setting up machine guns on the roof and, 13 hours stuff, Benghazi stuff. It was just talking to people on the ground, coordinating with law enforcement, having people who can watch for if the band of looters or mob starts to come down the road, and then how do we try to get them to leave without escalating things. And that's the stuff that I don't think most people want to talk about or think about. They want to just do the CQB Navy SEAL stuff. And I get it. I've been there. I've done CQB classes. They're a lot of fun. I've thrown flashbangs, also a lot of fun. But it's probably not something I'll ever need to use in my lifetime. Working with people I use every day. So that's my focus and has been the last few years, has been a lot more of the people and leadership stuff and some of the business stuff that comes from that. Way more than your traditional preparedness, which is probably why I wasn't super prepared for the tornado that happened recently and the storm, because I've been so focused on the people element. And I would love to see a shift in people into recognizing that and realizing that and developing those skills, because I really do think those will be a lot more important in the future than what barrel length you have on your rifle and what scope you have. I mean, I like that stuff. We talk about it. We post videos to educate people so they make good purchases, but that is only this piece of the puzzle. It's very small. So
absolutely.
I don't know if that's a roundabout way of answering your question of what could happen, but
better than I could have imagined.
Oh, okay.
Yes, because I mean, I was initially going in wanting to know, what is a reasonable setup for someone in like the first 24 or 48 hours to be armed, maybe at a higher capacity, but maybe also subliminally if you have to travel in public and pick up supplies or whatever, which is like not the best scenario, but maybe things are going bad. You don't realize you have enough, something like that. That was originally what I was going for, but this makes so much sense. I mean, if you've seen The Walking Dead, you would know that it is a movie or series about people fighting and then zombies are around and like,
oh yeah, it's people stuff.
It's people
It's
stuff.
not really the zombies.
No, not even at all. And Negan just messed it all up. So anyway, all that to say, I agree. And even Walking Dead agrees, I think. But yeah, so since we've gone over the cerebral side, the communication side, I know a few exes of mine that would be dead. But let's get into, I hope that joke landed because they didn't communicate well. Did that not? Did you get it? Did you get it? Was that good? Okay, cool. It's not like they watched this or anything, but moving on. When it comes to gear, so say someone wants to make a setup, how do you say they should start that journey? If that's something you want.
Yes. No. It's a good question. At a minimum, everyone should have a handgun that they can conceal carry for that supply run type situation where the environment is not super hot, but you want to have protection. And frankly, you should carry a gun at all times anyway right now because it's easy and things can happen at any time. Right. But you should have a weapon of some sort you could conceal and move surreptitiously with to give you protection while you go and do a thing, whatever it happens to be. The next step from that is you can kind of upgrade your probably your posture as well to try to deter certain nefarious people. And that would be a rifle and the equipment to go with that. So nowadays that is body armor, which as a fun fact about body armor, a lot of people complain about the cost of body armor. If you go and convert usually the best way to do it is how many how many days of labor it took to make armor. Throughout all of history, armor was insanely expensive throughout all of history. Like a full suit of knight armor was like $250,000 adjusted to today's money. Body armor today you can get for like $300. Yeah. And it's not bad. Like Hesco stuff, it starts at like probably $360, something like that. So when people complain about the cost of armor, they have no idea how good they have it compared to what a shield cost, like back during like 1000 AD, or a full suit of knight armor in like the 1200s. It is cheaper than it's ever been before. Chainmail, I think, was like $20,000, something like that. Adjusted to US dollars, inflation, all that good stuff. So body armor goes with rifles. It stops generally if you get rifle plates, other rifle bullets. If you are bringing a rifle to a fight, you should expect that other people have rifles too. So the second a rifle comes out, unless it's some very specific, it's in a small little backpack. I'm driving to the supply pickup point and there's rumors of looters who might try to raid or something like that. Unless you're doing some weird like low vis thing, having a regular rifle and a plate carrier to complement the rifle with ammunition and some protection is the bare minimum as far as I see it. It's also the bare minimum of any infantryman in the military is they have a rifle that shoots an intermediate cartridge, 30 caliber or down to, 223, 5.56 or something similar. And then they have armor of some sort. Some countries have better, some have worse. So I really do think that's the bare minimum. But then also being realistic with this stuff is the huge fire extinguisher for if I have to like put out a fire. Realistically, though, I have my handgun and I'm probably more likely to use this if I have to use something. The armor and the rifle comes out kind of as a last ditch thing is how I see a rifle and a plate carrier. But I do think it's the bare minimum. Then you can get into specialized equipment like chest rigs and packs for rucking if you need to move a prolonged distance, or packs that can hold sniper rifles. That's where the gear starts to, kind of break off from there, and you can specialize into weird stuff. But if everyone just had an AR-15 that had a 14.5 barrel, 16-inch barrel, or 11.5, doesn't matter, body armor that could defeat that same round, that will get them most of the way there, in my opinion. The next part is just, do they have the training and the will to use that equipment? Do they know when to put it on, when not to? Because the last thing you want to do, like you said, is put on all your kit and your helmet, go downtown, and then the cops are all like, who's this guy? Like, we have it under control. Like, you're a problem. And then you've got to deal with that. And that happened in 2020 in a few instances. It did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
5 years.
So it has been a while. Yeah. I kind of forgot 22 and 23, to be honest. I remember last year and like 21, but,
sure.
But yeah, you have to have the discernment to know when that equipment comes out, how to use it, and that it's a last resort. Like, I don't always have armor in my car. I I generally have a rifle in my car. And I'll probably never use it, but it's there for that. If I'm in a location and I hear gunshots far away and I'm within reasonable distance to respond, and it doesn't seem like authorities are already there, I'm willing to take a rifle and go see what's going on. I also know what risk that imposes on me, where I may get shot by cops. And you know what? That's fine. I don't mind that. I mean, it would suck, but it's a risk I'm willing to take that rifle and move towards the incident of whatever is occurring and seeing if I can change the outcome of what is happening. If it's already over by the time I'm there, then I have a rifle in my hands and I'll have to deal with the authorities when they show up accordingly. So, but it's having discernment to know what is realistic. And I think a lot of people lack that. They lack some of the education around it. They think a plate carrier is for a bump in the night when someone's breaking into your house. You're not going to have time to put it on. That's not what a plate carrier is for. A plate carrier is for a premeditated, you have planned to go and conduct an operation or do a thing. It's there for added protection. You have time to put it on, time and opportunity. It's not a reaction type piece of equipment for most people. That's not how that equipment should be seen. Your pistol is a reactionary, like I can get to it fast. That's why you want a holster that's decent. Yes. That's very quick and accessible. Yes. That I'm using a handgun to react to something happening. Kit, if I have to grab night vision and kit and rifles, I'm not reacting to a thing that is happening in the moment. I am responding to something the next day or later that day, and I think a lot of people just don't get that. And so they miss that discernment piece and that pre-planning piece that I do think is really important. And they neglect their carry gun, which they're a lot more likely to need and they're a lot more likely to use. So, absolutely. So yeah, bare minimum, rifle, armor, handgun you can carry. If you have those three things, I mean, helmet's nice too. If it's ballistic, that's cool. But if you have those three things and you can put the rest of your money into ammo for training and driving an hour to a range, you're good to go. And then you just kind of scale from there a little bit. So that's my take. I appreciate the whole thing. Oh yeah. I was hoping to talk to you about this. This is not a topic that is frequent. I had she's at Mother Prepper online. I love her. Had her on. How are we on time? Are we good? No, we're good. Okay, solid. I had her on the podcast to talk about practical preparedness. And she's a great example of all that. She also does jiu-jitsu and she's started competition shooting and she carries and she trains with all of them. And I like what you said about not neglecting the concealed carry firearm. Mm-hmm. It's so easy to do when you get into different I've niches. Done it. Oh yeah. Like when I started USPSA, I got to where I wasn't even comfortable carrying. I was like, wait, hold on. When's the last time I did this? When's the last time I drew from holster? Yeah. And this was, I was balancing like a master's program. I had reasons. You had things, other priorities. Yeah. But like once I realized it, I was like, I have zero excuse. And that's Lisa's fault. She introduced me to USPSA. So sorry, Lisa. But yeah, it's so easy to do that. Since we're on that topic, what would you say I know there's the podcast you did with Vortex, you talk about the benchmark of what it is to train appropriately for your standards. Is it a citizen who's concealing, all the way up to military and so on? What would you say a good way is to balance concealed carry, competition, tactical preparedness? You have something for that? Big question. Ooh, it is. I wish there was a minimum standard of some sort. Now, unfortunately, as soon as you get into that territory, then it's, well, who regulates it? Is it the government? And I don't like any of that. So if there was an unspoken standard, and this is where bullying is a good thing, I actually think. Peer pressure. I was recently at an organization in the military, and I noticed there were no overweight people. And so I asked, like, well, are there PT standards, whatever? They said, no, we just let them know if they're if they're going over. And I was like, okay, well, it works because I ain't seen nothing. So I actually think there's a level of that which is productive and healthy. And I think we need more of that in this industry. And we've started to have more of that the last few years, which has been really good. But there are instructors who need to be called out, and there are people and consumers that need to be called out on their purchasing habits or their, or how they're training exactly. But I think there does need to be a bare minimum for if you carry a handgun and you're willing to take the risk of carrying a handgun, because there is risk associated, and you're willing to use it in the proximity of other humans, which is already, again, a very risky, dangerous thing. You could shoot the wrong person, a stray bullet hits someone, 100 meters away down the road. There's a level of training that you should push and focus on that allows you to be confident if you do have to draw that firearm and use it. Driving lessons are not a great example, but driving is an interesting thing in our society because it is the most dangerous thing that we do every day without batting an eye. We propel a 3,000 pound vehicle, 70 miles an hour, past other people by like 20 inches. And we're like, oh, we're cool with it. It's not a problem. Right. More people, I think, die from car accidents every year than shootings, stabbings, murders. Like it's a lot of people die from cars, but our society's like, it's okay. It's a risk that we are willing to take because we need to drive and get our things and do our stuff. Every country pretty much has adopted vehicles and the risk associated with having them. I don't think gun owners have associated or have accepted the risk and the responsibility that comes with owning a firearm. Most people who drive understand, hey, if you don't pay attention, you'll get someone killed or you will die. One of the two. So everyone approaches driving, at least to a point, with a level of responsibility and seriousness that keeps the death count as low as it is. As high as it is, it could be way higher. And in some countries in Africa, it's very high compared to even here. So I don't see firearms treated the same way, where it's seen like a vehicle, the responsibility of driving a car, where it's, hey, I have a deadly weapon. I really need to know how to use this thing. I need to know how to put hits on target. I need to know how to draw somewhat efficiently. So if it does turn into, if it's a time is life situation where someone's in the process of shooting people and the more time they have, the more people they shoot, the last thing you want to do is fumble your draw, move really slowly, or you just sort of bobble along because people are dying while there's time on the clock. So I don't have a standard to put out there, but what I would recommend for people is, and it's not so much just the standard, it's if you are training monthly, if you are making the time to go to the range monthly and you are dry firing, let's say once a week, the bar can be low. Once a week, you're dry firing with your carry gun. Once a month, you're going to the range with your pistol. That I think is a good start. And that will keep people busy. That will keep a lot of gun owners busy. There's something like 44 million carry permits. It's probably way more than that who are carrying guns because of constitutional carry. So we probably have, but not everyone carries every day in society. So at any given time, there's probably 15 million people carrying a gun in public at all times. It's probably somewhere around there, 10 million. That would keep all those people very busy if they were going to the range once a month to shoot an accuracy-based drill, an accountability-based drill, pushing their speed maybe a little bit, and dry firing once a week. I think that's a good start for everyone, men and women included. And then from there, that's when you start to specialize into like, do you want to do USPSA as well? Do you want to do sniper stuff? Do you want to shoot rifles? Do you want to whatever? But at a bare minimum, you should be shooting your carry gun every month. In the process of doing that, you will probably get better, depending on how focused you are and how purposeful you are. But you will at least stay familiar with the weapon and what's going on. You will know it functions. Also, during that time of shooting once a month, so you get like 12 times over the course of a year, you will also discern if there are issues with your gun, because there are people who are carrying a gun that probably was not put back together properly and they don't even know it. Or there's some other issue where they forgot the magazine that goes in it and they haven't noticed for weeks. That has not happened to me. But I have hit the mag release before, and as I bent over them, I felt the mag light come out. I've had that happen before. And then I was like, slammed it in. But if you're shooting it regularly enough, that will help prevent those little issues from arising. I've forgotten to be chambered before. I've done that where I've dechambered to dry fire, and then in the process I put my mag back in, I put it back in the holster, and then a couple days later I was like, I'm not chambered. How long have I been unchambered for? And it's probably like 3 or 4 days, you know? So that's happened. Yes. And that's why you want to train regularly, is to help discern those things when they happen, fix them, resolve them, fix your gun, get a new gun, whatever it is. And you just have to be shooting somewhat regularly. So that's a low bar. Trap fire once a week, live fire once a month, 100, 200 rounds. It's not a lot. But that would keep the 10 million concealed carriers who are carrying in public right now. That's an estimate. It's not fact, although I could just say it's fact and, be an SME, I guess. That would keep everyone busy, and we would have a more prepared group of citizens. So that's what I
Absolutely.
think. But
oh my gosh, I appreciate you sharing that so much. Yeah, I wish I would have looked for a standard at least when I had begun. And I'm calling myself out so much right now to say, I think there's a pressure with content creation, and we just talked about.
Oh, sure, yeah.
We talked about, either you're training too much on the tactical side or the competition side that you defer concealment training. I would say that like now my range is actually an hour and a half away from me.
Oh, wow.
Speaking of, so to further your point or to support your point. So I know that I would have deliverables with content creation I'd have to meet that day.
Yes.
And if you know anything about content creation, you know that like 10 things can go wrong, and you can have like 50 takes and it can still not be right. Like there's a smudge on the
lens
camera
or something. Yeah,
exactly. That reminds me of the Rick and Morty episode. Anyway, okay, stay focused. We're here. Okay, so my big thing has been like not carving out enough time to truly train, and so I've started breaking up my training sessions into like absolutely no content creation. I might make a story that takes a total of 10 seconds. Just be like, guys, I actually train. But yeah, that's been a struggle of mine, a challenge of mine to have a separation of those two concepts and being intentional with that. And also like, what am I actually doing on the range besides the bill drill? Right. So that's my add-in on that. And I appreciate you sharing that aspect.
And I have to do the same thing because shooting, I mean, shooting while filming gives you familiarity on the gun, but you are not getting better. And a lot of people don't understand that, but all the years I was doing tons of YouTube, which I still do, I guess, but I don't count most of that as training, which is why I went to the range on the weekend when I wasn't filming to just shoot. And so I know exactly what you're talking about. And the sad part is most content creators do not train on their own. They only go to the range if there's cameras. And I've known people who've said that. And like we're willing to say it. And I'm like, you hear yourself? Like it's kind of horrible. They will not go to the range unless there's some content opportunity, some fame producing thing. And they don't realize that no, the fame producing thing or the subject matter expert thing that can happen is you just going to the range and getting better. Yes. And then that will translate to everything you do in the future if you just go and do that instead. So no, I appreciate that you have recognized that and you set aside dedicated time to focus on training because content creation is difficult. People who don't do it joke about it. It is difficult. It's a unique kind of work. And then when you mix it with guns, it gets even weirder. So yes, keep it separate. Do film yourself, though, and this is where you have to be careful. Filming certain reps so you can look back and see what's going on, but not allowing that to start to dictate like the angles or the type of shot or talking to the camera or whatever, So I'll occasionally put my phone on the ground, just super wide, just so I can kind of go back and see what I'm doing. And I just throw it down there and then keep, paying attention to the drill or whatever I'm doing. So
absolutely.
That's good.
I like that balance. That's kind of, it sounds like a little bit of a, when should the camera come out kind of scale. So I really appreciate you sharing that. Yeah. And if you're in that boat, no shame, just be real with yourself and get it done. Soon I'm moving out of state. I'm going to be with someone who goes to the range regularly. And I'm really excited to also have a community right now. Yeah. And I don't think this is something people talk about. Like, it's so much fun to go to the range alone. I personally love going right before they close. They love me for that. This is outdoor though. So and then I have a 4Runner with speakers in like the very back. I don't know if every car has that, but I'm just like specifically saying this is my 4Runner. And I love blasting like ridiculous music and then just like having fun. It's like it's almost like a little self date, but also like having a community of people that are going to train, kind of like going to the gym with friends. Like there's something really great about that. So if you're listening and that's something you're struggling with, definitely like reach out to the community. If you get involved in competition shooting, try to make some friends, see how they handle their guns at the competition. And then
it's a good way to suss people out.
Exactly.
That's true.
Yeah. Lisa passed that test for me and then we started shooting together as if she wasn't competing far before me. But anyway, no, I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah. As far as prepared questions, I only have one more for you.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
We can go anywhere if you have thoughts. I know we're coming to time. I love what you said. And I heard you talk about this in another podcast, that people love to dog on things they don't understand right away, especially if it's not their idea. I sense here. The sidecar is what I'm thinking of specifically. So I'd love to know where you think you would have been if you listened to that. To listen to people say,
Interesting. Well, so I'm stubborn.
Okay.
I think people probably picked up on that a little bit. Yeah, interesting. That's a good question. I'm a little stumped on that one. Thankfully, I think I was stubborn for the wrong reasons earlier. I had an opinion about a thing almost to the point of delusion, which is actually like a good thing sometimes for like business owners and stuff. That can actually potentially be very strong, because what you don't want to be is completely swayed by every opinion.
Yes.
In the age of the internet, because I can go online and I can find a supporting opinion about me if I want. I can also go find a negative opinion if I want. Like, I can find any opinion. They're all out there that could support whatever view of myself that I'm having that particular day. I can find one. They're out there. So you don't want to be swayed by everything on the internet. I think I didn't understand that part. I was just stubborn. I just was like, they're wrong. Now I'm a little more, I can see the nuance to a criticism, and I'm a little more mature, but yeah, you just have to understand that. I mean, I've been told, it's actually before the internet. There was a guy in my church who told me, I've been dealing with this my whole life, adult life, I guess, that my company wouldn't work. It wouldn't succeed. There's no money in custom. And I was like, that really sucks. I think there is, and I'm going to do it anyway. So again, that's a delusion, and it worked. I've had people for the last 11 years telling me nonstop that I can't say, stay in my lane. You can't train SF guys unless you're an LE dude or a cop. Well, I have, and never been a cop, and I've never been in the military. I've been told by people my whole adult life that I can't do things, and then I go and do them anyway. But as I've gotten older, I try to be more realistic about, if I'm getting good criticism about this particular topic, like say long range or something, or people think I'm starting to, put myself in the realm of a subject matter expert without having done it very long, 2 years. I actually need to hear that and realize that I need to fix that and adjust it. But yeah, I think with the internet, the big thing I tell people is you can't let it control what you do, because you won't get anything done if that's the case, because there's just way too many opinions. Everyone has an opinion on the internet. What you have to learn over time, and this is the tricky part, is discerning the productive criticisms, because they are very helpful, from just the flood of negativity and people. And it's not even always negative. Like, people could tell us, hey, we really want you to make such and such a product. And then nobody buys it. It's not just negative feedback. It's all feedback. You kind of have to take, it's just like, hey,
unhelpful.
Yeah. Okay. It's like, it's probably not that helpful. It's not useful. They don't know. They don't have the context to the business and what we're doing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, if you're in a position with the internet, you just need to remember that these people are seeing 1% of you. They don't actually know what's going on. Yeah. They don't actually know what your goals and priorities are, unless you've said it 10 times on a podcast, 10 different podcasts. And even then, they'll only listen to 2 of them. So they haven't heard it 10 times. But yeah, you can't let the internet control what you're doing, but you can't feel that way about the internet forever. And I've seen people do that, where they're like, oh, there's someone with an opinion on the internet, I don't need to listen to them. And it's like, no, that was a customer who's like actually concerned for your well-being and wants your company to do well, and they are giving you an opinion. Like, you should listen to that person. Now, these 10 people on Reddit, different story. They're just being chumps. So you don't want to block it out completely. But I'm glad I was stubborn in the early days. And I didn't listen to some of that negativity, and I just did the things anyway. Now I'm stubborn still, but a little more carefully in what I'm stubborn on. And I really want to make sure it's the right thing before I'm stubborn on it. And not stubborn on stupid stuff. So I recant positions I take every couple months on certain things, little business decisions and things, where I'll hear the opposing view. I'll think about it, and I'll be like, yeah, actually that's right, and I was wrong like earlier. That's fine. And I think that's something that you get as you get older and get some experience. But yeah, don't let the internet control everything about what you do.
Right.
Just like little pieces.
Right.
Very small pieces.
And was there like a job you were wanting to get away from at the time that you would still be doing now, or were you just kind of naturally progressing?
I had nothing.
Okay.
I say that I was a volunteer firefighter. I was enjoying the medical side. Mm-hmm. I was looking into being a paramedic. I had the huge book that a paramedic friend loaned me, that I was like reading. Like, it probably wasn't that useful to me at the time, but I was interested in doing that. It's possible if I hadn't started T.REX, I would have become a paramedic or tried to. I suck in classrooms and with coursework. I passed the wilderness first responder class, but I don't think by much. The written test part, the practicals I did well on, but the written part, no. I'm not good at that stuff. So I don't know. I don't know what I would have done had it not been for T.REX. And even, last few years as I've thought about like, is T.REX going to be my whole life? I don't think so. But, what are some other things I want to explore and do, either in the defense industry or not in the defense industry, that are related or not related. And so I'm exploring a lot of other things right now. They're not even related to T.REX.
Is there anything you're excited about you'd want to share?
I can't, maybe I could share in like 6 months, maybe, maybe a little longer. Right. But yeah. So there's a lot of interesting things, but don't let the internet control you. That's all I'll say.
I love that. No, thank you for sharing that. Just to add to that, I tell this joke all the time. You could be a puppy veteran cupcake shop and get hate. I remember when I left medical school for this industry, I got a ton of hate. And my message, I watched all these people on TikTok leave certain career paths for others. And it actually inspired me to leave med school. I was miserable. I was doing it to appease my dad. And honestly, not all of that was like, he didn't like force me. He was just a great physician to shadow and honestly made me excited about medicine. He was like, you will never have a bad day in your life when you're helping people like this. And I was like, this sounds amazing.
Oh yeah.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were saying like the camera. Okay, cut off. That's so funny. Anyway, all that to say, I had people write me that were like, oh, okay, so you're leaving a field where you save lives to take lives. And like, oh my God. I hit a day where I was like, I'm going to beg them to let me back in. I had dreams for months about running up to my med school committee and being like, let me back in, please. Like these dreams where I was like pounding on the doors of the med school because I just felt so guilty. But this career choice has been the best I've ever made. It was kind of a pathway, like just to kind of add a little bit of my thing. Like it was a pathway that wasn't really paved. I feel like I had to pave it a bit. And I think there's a certain benefit to being a female in the industry. I think that helps a lot.
It can, yes.
And one of my goals was to become, one of the good ones, of course. But same with the podcast. I started it when I was in school and I felt insane, but I also just convinced myself and was delusional in a sense to be like, people want to hear what I have to say. Yes, that's it.
It is very delusional. Yeah, it really is. When you think about it, after it's like... Oh, really?
Right. It's like whatever gave me the idea. Yeah. But anyway, I really appreciate you sharing that. I love the idea of alternate timelines. It's something I love talking about with my friends. So I know Lisa's not surprised that I asked this at all. But thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And as far as what you want to leave the listeners with, it's something I always ask my guest speakers. Anything at all?
Oh boy. My point about the internet is it weighs on me pretty heavily. I have a lot of opinions about, we're the first generation to have the internet, essentially. It's when it was invented and stuff. And if I were writing a thesis paper, which I actually started writing a while back and I need to work on it. The concept is, and this applies to you, applies to me, and applies to other people who are interested in being content creators. I believe there's a responsibility that we all have to, when we are publishing content on the internet, which at this point I assume is up forever. Servers could get taken down and stuff gets lost in the ether, but let's assume for a moment that all content that we put on the internet stays forever and the next generation and the next generation and the next generation will inherit it. And I've seen content over the last even 5 years start to get worse in the gun industry, video game industry, everywhere. It's getting more childish and immature and not as intellectual than older content. And I have a concern for society as a whole, and you could even say human civilization, that we wield the internet tool that we have poorly. And all the content that we create over the next, if I'm making content for the next 50 years or whatever, that I leave behind to my kids and their kids and their kids, we'll just have a horrible version of the internet in the future that we're leaving behind for them if we don't create good content today. And I'm still kind of wrapping my mind around how I'm going to write this paper and explain why, because I've been in the midst of it. I have some experience. You could even say I'm an SME a little bit on that particular thing. But I actually think there's something to be said about that, because the internet, we could lose the internet in 20 years too. There's a lot of research for that. Engineering standards going down and web development and stuff and software. But yeah, I think the content creation side, there is a level of responsibility there that I think people take for granted. And if the internet is going to be this tool that we progress to, every generation afterwards, then we should make it really cool and make our content the best that it can be, improve it every year, possibly go back and critique our old content and say it was cringe and how it was cringe. I may do some of that soon. In a more productive way, like, hey, I was working with the information that I had. Here's why it's a problem. And here's what I'm doing now, which is very educational and interesting. Yes. And just to have a goal to level everything up and make sure that the stuff we're leaving behind is good and productive. So that's my thesis for this content related social media world that we're all in. That's, and it's been getting worse every year. So I'm just saying, right. It's pretty bad.
Trying to keep up with the attention span.
Oh, for sure. 100%. 100%.
I spoke about that earlier.
Yep.
And I really like the idea of you critiquing your old videos. I think it gives the later generations almost permission to do that in a way.
Yeah.
Like not permission to fail in the sense of the permission to spread misinformation, but the permission to learn and then to bring awareness to that learning and then to educate further.
Right? Oh yeah.
And so if you're at the front of that wave leading that, I have hope.
Okay.
So
I will start working on a script for the first video and it can come out in a few months, maybe. Yeah.
Good. We'll be on the lookout for that.
That'll be cool.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for coming out.
Absolutely. And we'll have to do it again in 6 months when you're able to talk about stuff.
Something like that. Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah.
Show up. Just kidding. I would never.
Okay.
Awesome. All right.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
SOG Knives began with the mission to reproduce the original SOG Bowie knife used by the Special Ops Unit MACV SOG. Today, SOG knives are carried with confidence into the most demanding situations. Forged out of tradition, hardened in the field, honed for you, whether you're protecting others or leading an epic hunting expedition, tackling one of life's everyday challenges, or facing your most extreme conditions yet, lead the way with SOG. What began as a single commemorative model soon became a full line of innovative tools, field proven by U.S. Special Forces, even honored as the Navy SEAL knife of choice. I've personally carried SOG knives since I added knives to my everyday carry setup, and have yet to be disappointed by their design and durability. Their craftsmanship is rooted in legacy of honor and courage, and is unmatched. With SOG by your side, you are equipped to lead the way, no matter the challenge. So join the ranks of those who dare to push beyond the limits and define their own legacy, and use code SHESHIELD20, that's SHESHIELD 20, to save and to support the pod. Again, that's SHESHIELD20 at checkout.